Hello. J.K. Rowling's coming in for some trouble again, isn't she? A museum has now cancelled her. Not cancelled Harry Potter, I mean that's far too profitable. But her, no. She has super hateful trans views. Right, McPop in Seattle. Oh, yes. It would have to be Seattle, wouldn't it? A McPop in Seattle will continue to display Harry Potter memorabilia, because that's what the kids come to see, but will make no reference to author because of gender-critical comments. That's pretty... actually, that rather reminds me of something when I was doing French literature in one of my university courses. I mean, I was taking a course in French literature, and I was having a tutorial, and the professor, he quoted somebody, and then he reached a dog-eared book down from his shelf to look up the quote and discovered that it was anonymous. And then he looked at the fly page, and it turned out it was printed in the 40s. And he said, this is a Nazi publication, and they would have removed the name of the author because he was a Jew. That was the first time I'd come across that idea, and it made quite an impression. Anyway, that's what they're doing here. So they're following Nazi practices. That's nice. A museum has airbrushed J.K. Rowling out of its Hall of Fame because of her gender-critical beliefs. The Museum of Pop Culture, MoPop, in Seattle, Washington, accused the author of holding super hateful and divisive opinions in a lengthy blog post explaining its decision. Rowling has received online abuse for her opinions on transgender issues after arguing that women should not be ousted from their jobs for believing biological sex is real. She strongly denied accusations of transphobia in 2020 after mocking the use of the phrase people who menstruate in place of women. You know, the problem with the sort of people that Rowling has found herself up against is that no amount of explanations or reason or logic will make a difference. I think it was Bonhoeffer, wasn't it, who said you really cannot argue with stupidity. Intelligent people argue logic, but stupid people just cannot understand logic. So whatever you say, you're on a hiding to nothing. I'm afraid that Rowling didn't know that when she started this little row. While MoPop, I keep wanting to say McPop because that's the sort of logic that it's coming up with, isn't it? While MoPop continues to display memorabilia from the Harry Potter films, an article by its exhibitions project manager confirms references to the franchise's creator are no longer included. I must say that's a rather interesting piece of architecture. By no means all that bad, so much as I can see from it here. The museum doubled down on its decision on Saturday, saying it unequivocally stands with non-binary and transgender communities. And that means, of course, victimising somebody. You know, isn't it amazing how these people who like to call themselves victims are themselves some of the biggest victimisers? I'm Granniopteryx on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I'm also on Twitter and Gab. I let you know when I've uploaded a new video on Twitter and Gab. Since many people don't seem to be getting notifications, it might be worth subscribing to one of those. Also, subscribe to this channel, like this video and share it. Oh, by the way, all the links are in the description, as are links to donation sites if you want to use them. But as I say, Click like. That's really very handy for the algorithm. Chris Moore, who is transgender and uses he, they pronouns, wrote in the 1400-word piece, "There's a certain cold, heartless, joy-sucking entity in the world of Harry Potter, and this time it's not actually a Dementor." 1400 words for an explanation. You know what? When somebody has to resort to so many words just to explain why you've erased somebody, it means you can't really explain it. Now, you can accuse them of being cold, heartless and joy-sucking, but that doesn't tell me anything about J.K. Rowling. It just tells me about your opinion, his opinion of Rowling. This certain person, can't even say her name anymore. What would happen? Do you think he'd explode? Anyway, is a bit too vocal with her super hateful and divisive use. Super hateful. That's really good English and descriptive, isn't it? How old is this person? I mean, super hateful is the sort of thing you'd expect from a 14-year-old. And divisive views to be ignored. Her transphobic viewpoints, I've never noticed any transphobic anything, are front and centre these days. She just gives her opinions when asked. But we can't forget all the other ways that she's problematic. Yeah, what are they? Explaining the removal of Rowling from Mopop's Hall of Fame, Moore wrote, "For the time being, the curators decided to remove any of her artifacts from this gallery to reduce her impact." I don't understand this. They've just said that the Harry Potter stuff is staying, and then it says they're removing any of her artifacts. Do they mean decided not to remove? I think that's probably, I don't know whether that's his fault or the copywriters. To remove any of her artifacts from this gallery to reduce her impact. It's not a perfect solution, but it's what we were able to do in the short term while determining long-term practices. On the author's induction in 2018, Mopop described the Harry Potter books as beloved and published a 3-paragraph biography of Rowling outlining her literary achievements. Actually, 3 paragraphs for J.K. Rowling and all of her output, and yet 1400 words for this guy to explain why he's erasing her. There's got to be something wrong with that. Anyway, Rowling has fat-shamed. She has a lack of LGBTQIA plus representation. I just don't have enough breath in my body to say that list all in one go. And using racial stereotypes. What? We learned that Rowling was a problem. Yeah. Which is why you'll see the artifacts without any mention or image of the author, he said. After all, Daniel Radcliffe, oh yeah, that great intellectual powerhouse, Emma Watson, yeah, and Rupert Grint are all incredibly vocal allies. Yeah, because they are, doesn't make Rowling wrong. She is the one who created the characters they played. I'd say that her brain power would probably outshine all 3 of them combined. They're probably pretty good actors. I don't mind. I know Daniel Radcliffe is supposed to be a good actor. But being able to remember lines and make believe on emotions and situations doesn't mean you're a great intellect. It just means you're good at what you do, which is fine. Rupert Grint has insisted trans women are women, trans men are men. Well, I beg to differ, young Master Grint, although you've probably Mr. Grint by now. While Watson, his co-star as Hermione Granger, donated to a controversial trans lobby charity Mermaids in 2020 before encouraging her Twitter followers to follow suit. So she is actually encouraging girls to get themselves maimed and mutilated, because that's what mermaids do. Boys too, I suppose, but a lot of girls really admire Hermione Granger and so would follow Emma Watson's advice. That's just despicable. And absolutely no proof that Emma Watson has any sort of human empathy or intelligence even. The damage that she cannot foresee in what she's doing. Last year, Mermaid's staff agreed to discreetly send a breast binder to a girl they believed was only 14, despite being told her mother would not allow its use. They're anti-parent, really, aren't they? And you wonder why. Anyway, Rowling has regularly spoken out about her concerns that making it easier to legally... I do wish they'd stop doing this. It's the Telegraph, for goodness sake. Legally to change gender would threaten the safety of biological women. Yes, and was one of the most prominent critics of Nicola Sturgeon's ill-fated attempts to change the law to allow trans people to self-identify without a medical certificate. If you happen not to know about this, well, there was a big kerfuffle a few months ago when Nicola Sturgeon was still in charge of the SNP and was trying to push through a law that said if you were over 16 you could just walk into whatever government bureaucracy she was setting up and tell them you identified as a member of the other sex, and then you had to wait, if you were 16, 6 months, and if you were over 18, 3 months, and then you go in again and you get the certificate stamped and you can change your passport and everything, whatever equipment you have. And this was going to cause a constitutional crisis in the UK because the rest of the UK required a little more circumspection than that. But that's why Sturgeon was doing it. She was trying to split the UK apart. Unfortunately for Sturgeon, just at that moment, a guy who'd raped 2 women and then said he identified as a woman, Isla, somebody called himself Isla, I-S-L-A, forget the second name, and insisted on being put in a women's prison. That caused enough of a fuss to back the SNP ideas of gender self-ID straight into the rough. Anyway, a spokesman for Mopop said, Mopop is proud to support our employees and unequivocally stands with non-binary and transgender communities. How about standing with ordinary straight parents for a change? In an increasingly divided world, which they are doing more to divide, pop culture can unite, inspire and spark important conversations. Not the way you're handling it, mate. All right, well, yeah, that's Rowling. I'm sure, as she is rolling in cash, is probably not all that bothered by Mopop's ridiculous behaviour. But what gets me is the fact that there is no general support for her and no outrage with Mopop. I haven't noticed that, but of course we are talking about Seattle, aren't we? Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.